Welcome to the Mindful Messenger Show, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Media Project. My name is Amanda Johnson, and today we are talking to Tami Dempsey about mindful spiritual connection and transformation. As a pastor, Tami Dempsey told God one day that she felt like he was this big vending machine up in the sky with no price tags, and she was a hungry heart gazing longingly through the glass at delicious-looking packages of all that he had to offer. But because there were no price tags, she had to just keep putting in her quarters and pushing the buttons and putting in her quarters and pushing the buttons, hoping that something would drop down the hatch, anything to soothe her pain and nourish her hungry heart. Every once in a while, Tami would have a good day, and yet she had no idea how or why it had happened. She begged God to tell her the secret to his vending machine, and he did. Tami is super passionate about sharing the secret and helping other hungry hearts establish a direct connection with their own personal live-in life coach. Welcome, Tami.
It's me, all of me, I'm here. Oh, how exciting.
It is so exciting. We have had the craziest journey. Like, you know, I had someone say the other day, she was introducing me to a group of people, one of my clients, and she was like, "This is Amanda, my..."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it made me giggle, you know, because we end up like helping each other see things and learn things. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this show, is because I get to share not just what I've learned over the years, but the people that I've learned it from. And so we've had some very interesting plot twists in our journey together. So I'm excited to have you share your own personal journey and some of the tools that you have learned along the way. So thanks for showing up today. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. You know, I mean, I know where you were before. When we first met in 2010, holy crap, that was a long time ago. And yet, you know, one of the things that I've discovered doing these shows is that there's so much of my client's story that I don't know. Like, how is that possible that I could have helped them write these books and put these things in the world? And there's still details that I don't have. So I know that it was long, long before you met me that you had this idea of going out and changing the world and making it better. So when did that start for you?
For me, when I played with my little friends as a small child, I was always a school teacher. We played school. At about age 13, I started collecting articles and books for things that I would need for the day when I was going to help people. I knew I was going to help people. And so I started collecting things. But I was super shy, super shy. So I was even got married to a pastor and was a pastor's wife. And I could not speak to any size of group, not at all. They'd want me to talk at their little ladies this. I'd get there and I'd be in the bathroom throwing up because I could not talk to anybody. And so I went through a dark night of the soul in 1992, really dark night. And I surrendered to it. I said, I'm not going to fight this, God, but when this is all over with, I want a cookie. I ain't going through it for nothing. So I'm not gonna try to ask you to make it go away. It's here for a reason. And when it's over, I want a cookie. I want to be able to speak at a women's conference without fear or intimidation. That was in September of 1992. In February of 1993, I was standing in the lobby of this huge, beautiful hotel registering for a women's conference. And the president came up to me. She was a family friend. And she said, Tami, the speaker tomorrow morning is in the hospital. I need you to take her place. I said, oh, no, I don't do that. No, Tami, I really need you to do this. I don't do that. I don't know how, I don't even know how. I don't do that. And she argued with me. I argued back, and I finally convinced her this is not something I do. And so she walked away. And as she walked away, I heard that little voice that said, if not now, when?
Mm.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm at a woman's conference. Oh my God. I went chasing after her, and I said, yes, I'll do it. I went to my room and completely had a meltdown. It wasn't like I was an experienced speaker. I didn't have messages or, things in my back pocket that I could pull out, and I didn't know anything. So I told my roommate, can I have the room alone for a little bit so I could fall apart, and I got down on my knees and said, help, please. And all of a sudden, all this stuff started coming to me, things out of that file, because I still had that file. And so I thought, well, but I don't have that file. I don't remember. I know there was a poem that said this, and I know that there was, but I don't have it. Called my husband. I said, honey, go into the den in the office, and in the second drawer, and there's a file, several files that say Tami's stuff. And he went through and he started reading the stuff, and I wrote it down. And then I wanted a what do you call it? Like an object lesson. I wanted a rose and a rosebud. And I'm in a strange town. I had flown there, didn't have a car. And I said, well, I need a rose and a rosebud to make this really work. And I heard, go for a walk. In the morning after breakfast, just go for a walk. In the morning after breakfast, went for a walk, and there was a flower shop, got what I needed. Anyway, I spoke without fear or intimidation. I mean, I'm telling you, they laughed, they cried, a good time was had by all. And they haven't been able to shut me up since. So that's my story.
That's amazing. So,
yeah.
So what happened between the Tami who knew that she was like gonna help people, and then the Tami who was like, I can't, I know there's a file somewhere full of stuff that will help me to help people, but like what happened that you started to not believe? Because as you know, you've been in tons of my rooms. Like, how many of us had these gifts and inclinations and inspirations when we were little, and then over time something like beats it out of us? What happened for you? I mean, it like bludgeoned us to the point that we have brain injury trauma. We can't remember something that was so natural to us when we were little.
Well, the one thing that that I remembered was very traumatic that happened to me, and I had a well, I don't know if like all the incidences matter, but I learned one of the things, I was bullied at school, horribly bullied at school, made fun of, tripped, I was the school nerd. And so all the things that happened to me at school, when it came time to go to college, or there was no way, because I didn't want anything to do with school or teaching. I'd always wanted to be a teacher, but that got put out because I never wanted to set foot on a school ground again, any kind of, and they called me Frog. I was so tormented in junior high school. They called me Frog because when the teacher would call on me, all that would come out was a croak. I couldn't get words out. So, and then I daydreamed about singing. I wanted to sing, but I couldn't sing. And the same thing happened. That's why I knew when I heard that voice, if not now, when? Because you have to say yes, even though you're not ready, even though you're not prepared, you don't think. So I wanted to sing, and I daydreamed. I was that little girl that was the outcast. I mean, I was an outcast. I had no friends, and an older couple befriended me. She was my Sunday school teacher. Her husband didn't go to church at all. He was a college professor, and he was teaching psycho-cybernetics at the time, and the power of positive thinking. And he would tell me, Tammy, you can be anything you want to be, do anything you want to do, if you can just imagine it, feel the feelings of it. And he took me on exercises to show me that the body doesn't know the difference between the real and the imagined. And his wife would tell me, Tammy, that's faith. When you can see something that isn't as though it is, and you feel it, and you give thanks, and give thanks in advance, as Aaron would say, thanks in advance. Give thanks in advance, and be excited as though it's, so I had this coming at me, and so I was living in such a nightmare existence that I lived in a daydream world to escape my nightmare existence. And so when he told me that I could be in it, I started daydreaming about singing. And I wasn't daydreaming. I was pretending. I was like, I was already there. I could see the crowds. I could see their responses. I could see, and my family felt sorry for me. Oh, poor Tammy. She's in her room practicing again. No amount of practice is ever going to give her a voice. Poor thing, that type of thing. But I had imagined it so much that one day they were having a baptism or something, and things were being held up, and everybody was waiting. And my Sunday school teacher had turned to me and said, hey, Tammy, because everybody knew what I was doing, that I was doing this. It'd become like the family joke, amongst the little church, family joke, And she turned to me. Of course, I was a piano player. I was only about 14 at the time, but I was the church pianist. And she turned to me and said, Tammy, would you like to sing a special for us while we wait? Well, I'd heard that in my head so many times. I got up off the piano, went and grabbed an accordion, stood up behind the pulpit, and just, hallelujah, anyhow. In that moment, I had a voice. Because I said yes. And so when that became my way of being, and so here I could sing, but I could get up and sing powerfully, but I could not speak. I could not get in front of people and speak. So when that dark night of the soul came in, I said, okay, what I want. And I knew when I heard that you have to say yes, Tammy. And so gradually, that's what happened to me. But the problem was, I was very powerful, but I was in so much pain. Anyway, and how about we say where we met, and then I'll fill you in on my story.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. We really should do a bit on this. I've thought this over the years. Kind of turned into that every time we tell this story. So in 2010, I had started True to Intention 2009, where I was helping people from the beginning, and I tried masterminds and I tried all these different things, and I was like, man, gosh, if I could just get them all into a closed space where they couldn't, take off and do other things in between, we could really haul butt through all this content. And so I designed a 3-day retreat, and I put it out to a few people, kind of like a little pilot thing, like, come help me figure this out. And so there was this woman who was in the community, very prominent businesswoman, who, Janet Steiner, right? And she signed up for the program right away. And then she called me or emailed me and was like, I have this friend and I need her to come. And I was like, okay. So what had happened was I had met most of the folks in the retreat before, we arrived, but you were like kind of like a tail end registrant. And so, so here's what happened. I was in, oh my God, it still makes me laugh to think about it. I was in this sweet little guest house.
I need to interrupt first. Okay, so here's the backstory to that. I am, like, I gave you already 2 examples of how I manifested what I wanted. And so I was wanting to get back into coaching. I was wanting to write a book. I was wanting to do all this stuff. And nothing was happening. And I was Janet's assistant, her executive assistant. And she would demand that I had to go with her to all these networking meetings. And I would sit there feeling so like, what am I doing here? I don't want to talk to these people. I don't have anything to share. I'm not one of them. I'm just a secretary. And I had just gone to one of those meetings and was so miserable and and they were getting up and they were, things were moving and grooving for them. And I was sitting there so frustrated. I went out to my car and banged the steering wheel and cried, God, what? For 2 years now, I've been dreaming, believing, having faith. I've got it on my dream board, my vision board. I've got this, and what's going on? And he's like, Tami, I have set you right next to the people that could help you. I put them in the room with you, and you ignore them. And I said, why do I do that? He said, you tell me. Because I felt not enough. I'm not good enough. I don't dress, they have nice hairdos. My hair's just frizzy out there. And, it was just all this not enough stuff. In that room that day turned out to be so many. Amanda had been there. I didn't know her. She had tried very nicely to talk to me, but I just, yeah. I didn't, she hit the ball to me and I just let it go. So anyway, here my boss again, she says, Tami, I'm going to this writing retreat. I want you to come with me. And so I said yes. And during the setup, before we're going to go, Amanda tells us, now you're probably going to start, going upside down. Things are going to be triggered, and just know, you're going to want to back out because things just start going crazy. But just know that this is all a part of the process. Okay. So I start getting triggered, and I have my tools, I've used them, and I've overcome them. But then the next day I'm triggered again a little bit harder, and I manage, and I'm like, oh my God, what's happening? So then it starts on Friday at 2:00 or something like that. And I'm at work and I get majorly triggered so bad that I lost my voice. I could not speak. I lost my ability to speak. And the only thing I could say is that I felt like I had been raped. I was being raped. And I was fighting, and I couldn't, I had no words. And I fell completely apart in a meeting, no words. And I was supposed to be running the meeting. And my boss, who was the HR manager, he said, he took over real quick, because I looked at him like, you gotta do this, because I can't. And after the meeting, he said, Tami, go home. Go ahead and leave. Because I really couldn't speak. So this is where I was when I walked in to the retreat.
Right. So on my side, I was getting ready for my very first retreat, and I had all of the not enough conversation going on about my own experience. Like, this is my very first retreat. How's it going to go? Are they going to like it? I've charged them money. Are they going to ask for the money back? Cause it's going to be so terrible. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, and I've got my tools, and I'm managing and, setting things up, making it pretty, and it's all great and amazing. And then I hear the door slam, and I look up, and there's this woman who comes in super upset, obviously red-faced, and stops right in front of me and says, Where's my room?
And my thinking was, I walked in and saw Amanda, which I kind of knew who she was, but she's a stranger to me. And I realized, oh, I've seen her before, but I don't really know her. And the thing that went through my head, I never eat on an empty stomach or meet people I don't know. Oh my God, what did I agree to? I just agreed to come to a retreat with people I don't know, and I can't talk. And I was like, oh, what did I do? What did I do?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you asked where your room was, I pointed and said, it's in there. And you said, okay. And then you dragged your suitcase behind you. And I know that we disagree, but I swear you slammed that door. That's what I heard, because I was like, oh no, what is going to happen? Like, I knew this wasn't my first rodeo in transformational rooms, but honestly, at this point, I told people you probably get a little triggered, but I had no idea what kind of work I was up to until that retreat. Like, up until that point, I really was truly just helping people write good books. And so, then this woman shows up and literally, not just without a voice, but for 2 days, does not say a word. Like, you sat on the couch in this sweet little space, and people are sharing their visions and sharing their messages and where they came from, and they're sharing their stories, and we'd get to you and everyone would look at you and you would still not say anything. And so we were like, okay, we're going to give you the opportunity every time, and then just keep moving every time and the whole time I'm thinking, I don't know how to help this person. I have never witnessed this before.
Oh my God. And the thing that I think I did try to say something at one point, because what you said was, do you remember what you said? Why don't you want to go back?
Yeah.
And that's basically every time I said anything, your response would be, why don't you want to go back? And my middle finger on this good little Christian girl was just, I was sitting there like, oh my God, my middle finger just was like wanting to give it to you every time you say, why don't you want to go back? I remember one time I blurted out, I said, because back there, I had to wear dresses and not cut my hair, and I'm like, you probably weren't even talking about that at all, but I just like, I just let you have it. I couldn't do any of the exercises, none of them. I could, my brain just wouldn't do, it wouldn't work. I mean, no matter what, I just sat there blank. I had and it wasn't even just talking. Mm-hmm. I could not think. I was triggered back to, I was triggered back way back. And and here the pressure was coming on, because the last day and a half, everybody's telling their stories. You're taking us through this process, and what's my story? I don't know what my story is. I don't know. I don't even have the first notion of what to say. And it was miserable.
Yeah, it was, I could tell you were in a lot of pain, and I literally was just like, I have to give this woman credit. She is not bailed. Like, because I did not have locks on the doors or anything. Like, she's here for a reason, and I am just going to keep holding space and keep giving her the opportunity for when. And so that last day, I remember being like, everyone I think there were 4 of you in that first retreat, and everyone goes through and shares their story, and there's laughter and there's tears, as there always are when people are telling their stories, and then like we all looked at you and everyone kind of held our breath, like
no, there was 6, maybe even 7 of us, because the whole
We had
Yeah.
other people joining
Yeah,
us.
there was some, yeah, I can remember who was sitting where on all the couches and stuff. But I waited till the last because I honestly didn't know what, I knew I had to get up and I didn't know what I was going to say. And what had happened is I was awake till the wee hours of the morning. And just right as I was finally drifting off, exhausted, um, the only thing you said to me all retreat was, why don't you want to go back? What if you need to go back? And I heard that and I'm like, go back to what? Go back. And all that came to me was like all of a sudden in that semi-sleep, drifting off to sleep, the hunger. The hunger. Go, like you could sing your hunger song. That would be going back because I had moved away from all of that. And that's the only inspiration I got. Just get up and sing your hunger song. That's going back. She wants you to go back. Go back. So that's
Yeah.
what.
So we were all holding our breath and you popped up off the couch and went up there. We were like, oh my gosh, she hasn't talked for 2.5 days. And you got up there and you started singing, and it was like that broke the dam open for you, and you started to share your story, and just the amount of emotion and truth and wisdom that was flowing through you. I remember watching you thinking, oh, this is why she hasn't been talking for 2.5 days. And then you finished.
And I curtsied.
And then you tried to sit down. And, the whole room is stunned silent because you've just spoken for the first time in 3 days and spoken what you have. And I said, well, the whole point of it was to like get feedback and have people ask questions and all this. So I asked you to stand back up there, and you stood back up and you answered a few questions. And at some point you ended up on.
Okay. Yes. There was a lady that wasn't a part of the retreat. She was an author that was sitting at a table over, and she says, so here, like, talk about the universe conspiring in your favor, but I felt like it was totally conspiring against me, you saying go back. And then she speaks up and she says, oh I needed to hear what you had to say. And the song has been going through my head. I'm not a singer, but I really feel like I need to sing it for you. And would you believe she started singing the song that I was known for in the old days. I was known for this song. This was the Tami song. People were always asking me to sing it. And the funny thing is, when I tell you I was known for it, I was known for it. I got up to sing it one time, and my perspective was the pianist was playing over and over and not giving me any chance to come in. She was like, I'm thinking, she must love the sound of her playing because there's no way for me to come in. And then I finally start to sing. I don't remember singing ever. But what the first words to this song was, I have bad days. And so what came out of me, what the audience experienced was, I have bad days. And I passed out and singing in this huge auditorium, backed out. So this woman here at the retreat goes back to like way back by bringing up, she starts singing that song. And then I take over singing it. It's I have bad days, but the bottom line is, but God is good to me. And I start singing it, and whoa, took me back. All the resistance of me wanting to go back, that took me back. And I ended up falling on the floor in front of these strangers, sobbing my eyes out, sobbing. in so much pain and so much resistance. Yeah.
Yeah. And my experience was understanding, like, again, not my first rodeo. I have been in plenty of rooms before where I had seen that level of orchestration of this person showing up for this person. I'd been on the participant side of, listening to someone and just being like, oh my gosh, really? You just put all of this together for me? And having not only being shoved back to all of the old stories and pain that's so hard, but also having this like sweet part of it where you realize that this is actually somehow, even though it's painful, being conspired in your favor. Like there are no coincidences. And so the funny thing that had happened while you were speaking was I remember asking you to stand up from one side of the room, which was near the kitchen in this area, in this guest house that we were in. And then I remember that by the moment you were in a heap on the floor, bawling your eyes out, I was by the door.
Yeah, when I finally, well, they were moving, evidently there, I had tears.
Moving electrical sockets.
They moved the electrical socket because it was under me and they didn't want some big explosion. But I was down there in so much pain and thinking, oh my God, I haven't been in this much pain in years. I've learned how to heal my life. I was in pain, but I'm not in pain anymore. Now I'm feeling this pain, and it was like taking my breath away, and I couldn't, I remembered to ask myself, which was part of my message and my tools that I wanted to share, was that, oh, what lie am I believing right now that's creating all this pain? And the lie was that I needed to suffer to be powerful and to share my message. And I was done with suffering, didn't want to suffer anymore. That was it. But I didn't realize I had walked away from everything because I didn't want to suffer anymore. I was tired of being powerful and suffering. I wanted the power, but I didn't want the suffering. And as soon as that thought came to mind, I go, that's not even who I believe God is anymore. Of course I don't have to suffer to be powerful. And immediately all the pain was gone. And I looked up to get up, and Amanda was over leaning on the exit door, waiting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I freaked everybody out. I did this big thing in front of all these strangers. Oh, I was humiliated. But anyway, I'm like, Amanda's over by the exit, leaning on the door.
I mean, I was speechless. And the reality was that, I had been on my own spiritual journey. Raised in the Christian church, evangelical, and then, or non-denominational. And then I went to Christian university where they really pushed me hard in the honors program to think through my faith. And I'd had a lot of beliefs and teachings that had been systematically stripped away, but it was okay because I had this core experience of who God was in my teenage years. And as a child, I had experienced enough miracles that I knew there was something. And so my experience from that time to the time that I met you was that I was trying to explain something that was way out there that I didn't have a deep connection to anymore. And so that lightning bolt moment that gave me my message was that first moment of being reconnected to my spiritual self, to my source. And then, all this magic happened, but it had never been like it was back in the old days. I mean, when I was 16, sitting on the floor with my sister, I heard the voice say, it took me through this whole piece that showed me what my message was for the rest of my life. At 16, I heard it and delivered it for the first time in a Bible class, and yet I had lost that connection. And so what was happening for me while you were having your meltdown and breakthrough was that I was hearing the voice for the first time again. And the voice said, so this is what you're really up to. True to intention is not about just the books. It's not about making sure that the books and the messages are true to intention. It's about the people, because they have lost part of their intention. They've forgotten. And so this process that you're taking them through, taking them to go back and look at their story, is their ability, is the opportunity for them to go back and heal the stuff and remember who they really are and become that. And so I remember standing there and hearing, this is what your work really is, and you're standing by the exit door. Like, this is your choice. And, you know, as I'm listening to you share, I mean, there's so much. We need like 1 million episodes to catch people up on all of the important parts of our journey and the lessons that we've both learned. But to have you articulate that the primary thing that you were hearing on the floor and the lie was that to be powerful, you had to suffer. Think about what you have watched me walk for the last 7 years. Like, no doubt that you were like this angel put on my path to help me, because as I had to witness you through your journey, I had to start witnessing all of that truth in myself, that I had that same dynamic, that every time I would hit the most powerful place in my business and in my work, something treacherous would happen that would cause such suffering. So you were like the person who came in who wasn't, you were like an ally on the journey instead of one of these villains who showed up to show me the dynamic in an ugly way. You were the one over here that we were kind of in the trenches figuring this stuff out together. And so I can't believe how you just said that. I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, that's ultimately the whole point of this show, right? Is that people realize that when we're invited to become true to our intention, everything that we believe that's not in alignment with that will come up to be an obstacle and to say, and to be healed, right? Like, this is the belief. And most people just stop there instead of, you know, like, why every time that I get to this point, this relationship goes to crap? Or why every time that I get to this point in my business, some sort of weird betrayal stuff happens? What is happening underneath? What's the story going on underneath? And so,
right, that's that. I mean, because before, I mean, it was put in. I believed it from a small child that to be powerful you had to suffer, and so it was like needless suffering. I don't know how to explain that. It wasn't a suffering that was going to produce anything except power. And I had said, I want to be used. I want to make a difference. Make me suffer. And I was not going to do that. But what we learned together, I mean, you knew it in one way and I knew it in another, is that it's not that there isn't going to be ever any suffering, but the suffering is and it doesn't have to last forever.
amen.
It comes up because it needs to be healed. But when you surrender to it, that's what I was learning from you, there to learn from you, that that your whole message about surrendering to it and saying, what is it here to teach me? And all, I mean, it was it became such a huge, it was the piece I needed to be able to move forward. I knew that God, I knew it wasn't true that God was going to make you suffer if you want to be powerful. I had come to that realization. That's not true. I don't have to, you know, but there is suffering, and it only has to be for a moment. All I have to do is go, woo, I surrender.
Yeah.
And I'm here, and that next, of course, boy, I was hit over and over and over through that hole. I mean, it didn't.
Yeah.
I was not an easy Easy client there.
I know you were like the first one into the retreat to show me that, this is the work that I was really up to and that we were really doing together. And then of course you like hustled through your book writing process because we were doing an event and you wanted to be on that stage. So we were like, let's hustle you through this publishing process. And that was like another,
Oh my goodness.
it was another run through, because one of the things that I've seen over and over again since that first time with you, that you really helped me to learn how to brace myself for. And also not just brace myself, because the reality is that it's not really about me. It's about what the client is going through. And so there's that first level of exposure that happens when people have to tell their story in person, right? And then the second level is writing the story on the page, because of the way we do it. It really does take the person back. And so there's another level of exposure and having to own parts of their story that they may not have owned before. But then there's the level of exposure that you feel right before you publish. And that is, oh my gosh, I'm about to put this in print for good. Like, is this really what I believe? Am I really credible enough? Do I really have what it takes? All of those, whatever the beliefs are underneath, they pop up right there. And for you,
I had beliefs, part of my belief system, like religious belief system. I'm not going to say anybody told me this or taught me this, but this is what I gathered, what I, but that I didn't have any rights. What I wanted didn't matter. It was all about God and what he wanted, and I had to surrender to it. And it was this feeling like I never could have what I wanted, or it couldn't be just like how I wanted it, because there was this whole belief system. Now up here, because I had learned to dialogue with God, I knew that wasn't true. But the whole production process, every step of that way, it was bringing that belief system up. That because I had always settled. I had always settled because, well, it must be what God wants. It's, I don't get what I want. And so here I had this roomie that I was with all the time through this process, and boy, the designer would come up with the design, and she loved it the first time around, and I'm like, no, that's not what I wanted. Oh, but that's not. Oh. And I had never allowed myself to say what I wanted, and it was like, oh, but this is going in print. It's forevermore going to be, I guess I have to live with just kind of partially. And it was this battle, like, oh, it was like God saying, no, what do you want? Mm-hmm. I want to know what you want. Tell me what you want. I'm here to give it to you, but oh my God, I was a mess trying to go through that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and really and I think part of the message for the audience today is that it's easy to sit here and look back and say that was about not ever saying what I wanted, right? Like, it's easy now to look back and say this was what I was dealing with in that moment. But when we were in the middle of it, we were like, what is going on? Because, the designer is freaking brilliant.
Awesome. Yes, he's
brilliant. And he was doing, these amazing things over here. And it was like, I've never experienced this. So, I remember exactly where I was when I was like, so Tami, what do you think might be happening underneath this book cover thing? Because there was no explanation for it. But that's part of the gift for our listeners today, is to start paying attention to, like, these might not be, big, huge, tumultuous situations in your life, but just something that's like, this little thing that really, it shouldn't you know in your mind, there's no good reason for this to still be right here. For me to still be hitting this pattern, for me to still be, you know, trying to this project and it keeps failing through all this, like, what might be going on here? What might I need be, what might I need to be listening to or paying attention to underneath what the details are? And so, I think that's something that's really important for the audience to be in the question of what is really going on here, because that is something that you and I have asked ourselves individually and together so many times, right? Like, there's just something that is not quite right here. And fortunately,
this is not, yeah, this cannot be about the other person, because this is going on. This is, it changes, changes locations, it changes people, but it just keeps coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, we have so much to cover. Like, we're going to have multiple interviews because this is just so good. But, I think that one of the things that I would love to know from you is, what were some of those tools and things that you had that kept you, there's a lot I know that we've learned from each other, but what are some of the things that you've developed before and also since that you feel will really help our audience today get to that place where they can start to be more mindful about connecting and listening for that voice, and also going through that a transformational process? Like, I mean, just okay, God, I'm willing to do this, but I want a cookie at the end. Like, that's a tool, guys.
I ain't doing this for nothing. Ain't doing it for nothing. Yeah. So my message that I wanted to share was learning to dialogue with God, that I had a still small voice in me all the time that was ever present. All I had to do was get still, and that voice was there. And it wasn't because I was special or I was spiritual or anointed. It was part of being human. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to teach other people how to hear it, how to tune out the not God and to tune into the God voice. And it had healed my life. I had been in pain every day of my life. And so learning to hear that truth from the inside and replace the lies, I was no longer in pain. I mean, I was living a happy, joyful life for the first time in my life till I signed up for your course. But anyway, but I had forgotten where I'd come from, and I was wanting to tell people from where I was and not from where I was back when I got the message and the tool. And so that was part of it. So also in right there at the beginning, one of the reasons why I had walked away from everything is because I was burnt out. And people felt heavy. And okay, let me write a book, and I'll do a workbook, and I'll let people learn how to do what I'm doing without me having to touch them, without me having to have conversation with them, without me coaching or anything. And why, Tami? Why don't? Well, because it's too much. It's too heavy. Mm-hmm. And by surrendering to your coaching, I learned, I mean, we had a love-hate relationship. I would get so angry with you, so very angry with you. But you, without you even knowing what you were doing, you were demonstrating to me how I could move forward and do what I was called to do without it being heavy, mm-hmm. without, because I'd ask you a question and you would ask a question back. And or you would say, well, what if your message is the answer? I mean, that was all, and again, my middle finger would be like, just tell me, I just through this, just tell me the answer. Tell me the answer. Yeah. But what I was being to you what I didn't like people being to me, like coming in to me as the one with all the answers. I felt the responsibility to give them the answers, and like they would just come in and be dead weight. Just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. Now, mind you, most of the time they never did it, but that was and I felt I always had to have the right answer, and
so much pressure. So much pressure. And
people giving me their power.
Yeah.
Surrendering all, and if on my end it felt like responsibility, and they were just like surrendering their power, and I couldn't put that into words. But by the way you coached me, I said, just tell me, let's save me a week. I mean, just tell me. And you'd say, well, if somebody came to you, Tami, what would you tell them to do? Oh, I'd get so mad. But I knew you were right. I would tell them, well, why not ask God? Why not get still and listen? I mean, because that was the kind of, So it was just this whole learning how to coach again, but from a different, when you're a pastor, it's pastoral counseling, and you're there to tell people what to do and how to do it and da-da-da-da. And coaching was I thrived on it. I loved it. And yet I didn't want anything to do with it anymore. And so being in your program, I was in it for like a year. I think it was a slow learner, but I was like, I learned that I don't have to have the answers. It's not my job to have the answers. In fact, it's very, it's a misuse of power for me to give people answers.
Yes, right. And that, I think there's like a few really important things that you said here that I want to clarify for the audience, because this is so good, and we're going to have to like take it into the next interview for time. But the first thing is like, what is the true, we had a lot of conversations around like, what's the difference between being an expert and a messenger? And the expert is the person who is more like a guru, who feels like they need to have all of the answers, and they put out the answers in formulas, and they tell people this is how to do it and this is what to do. And then there are messengers who act more like guides, who are like trying to help people find their own answers and find their own power and reclaim all of that stuff that was lost. And we need both in the world. Like sometimes there are places where we just really need answers really quick to keep moving. But when it comes to spiritual connection and transformation, it is a misuse of power, because then we become the connector, and that's way too much responsibility. And so, but what's interesting is because you had kind of forgotten about where you had come from, there was nothing else to do. So because there was nothing else to do, because if you're unwilling or can't go back to feeling that level of pain, because there still needs to be some healing about it, then you can't really just be with someone in their pain without having all of your buttons pushed and it being too painful. And, since then we've both learned that we're intuitive empaths too, which is a whole other level of energetic overload, right? But if you can't be with someone in their pain and just be with them and not fix it and just help them to go through it and figure out their own answers, then the only other thing that you do is try to spit out a bunch of solutions so you can get the heck out of there, right? And
feel better. I need you to feel better so I can go on my way.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So that was, I think that was I wanted to make sure the audience hears that, because it is, I think, one of the reasons why people find themselves frustrated, because they've assumed a teacher mode and a preacher, teacher, fixer type thing. And in one way, it makes them feel safe because they don't have to go back and feel all the stuff that their audience is feeling. But then they don't get good results because they can't connect with their audience.
Right.
And so it's like this stress between, You know, so if you don't have any connection to that story and you haven't done any work around and healed it, then you pop up here, but then you lose your ability and your power actually to be able to create transformation for other people. And that is so much of the the lessons that we have learned together along this journey in so many different ways, because like so many of my clients, Tami became a really good friend who then got amazingly mixed into our family unit, which we'll cover much later, because you know I still have work to do around that story before we talk about it. But it's important because this is the thread.
Right.
What we touched on today is the thread of what we've been learning from that moment of you being on the ground and saying power and pain, like,
Right.
why do these things have to go together?
And oh, I must be hitting on something because I feel all emotional. But you know, where I was before and what I was surrounded by, I was like up here. I was the guru. I was up here and everybody was down here. And when I met you and I started watching you and, you know, then I had you up here and I was down here and you kept shoving that back, like, you know, like you would not let me give you my power. And the beautiful thing of, and I know it's not just me, because I feel special, but I know I'm not. And I mean, you because you do this so brilliantly that you surround yourself with people that you can learn from, and I'm learning from you, but you're always learning from your clients. And it taught me this thing, like, no, we're on this path together. Some days I'm the one helping you. Some days you're the one helping me. And some days we're helping another sister together or whatever. And we all have expertise that we bring to the table. And so we can glean from one another. But oh my God, it's that beautiful, I don't even know how to, you know, nobody's better than anybody else, and we're all powerful. And I had never experienced that before, and that is it's a beautiful thing to, like, I mean, I can remember when in the first few retreats that I went, watching you, probably wouldn't have been the first one because I couldn't, but I kept going back because I was so like, this young girl is like, she has these answers that I didn't have. I mean, if I could have known this stuff, and I was like, I want to grow up to be like her. So you were so polished and you had so much wisdom. And so I never ever called you. I never called you, and you would call me, and I would think, oh, she's just kind of checking up on me or whatever. And it took me years to call you, because I thought, well, she's busy, she's the coach, she's this, but you were just the same, like.
Yeah, I'm a person too. And I think that a lot of the trouble that we see in, you know, in some of this industry, the speaker, author, coach, and trainer, is like, at some point people feel like they have to be the brand, not the person, or they have to be the message, not the messenger, or something. It gets I heard
The expert.
I heard Jordan Peterson use the term thingify the other day, and it was like, we get thingified, like we stop being a person. and that to me is like the most horrible thing that I could imagine, that I could be out in the world helping people and feeling like an object instead of a person who's on the journey too. But that's not what the message is. You know, the message is go out there, position yourself as the expert, and it's like, yeah, you need to own your expertise, but positioning has a different, right? It's a different thing. So, oh my God, Tami, we have so much to talk about. So we're just going to hop off now and we're going to reschedule or schedule another one.
Right.
But before we part, what are maybe 3 things that you could share with your audience, the audience today, that you feel like would help them to practice more mindfulness in this area of connection, spiritual connection, and transformation?
Get still. I mean, get away from all the distractions. Find a place. Like, make it something you do every day, just like eating at a certain time where this is a time you're going to be still, because there's so many voices, and there's so many experts, and they can make you feel like this is the way you got to do things. And I'm telling you what, some of my biggest breakthroughs came because I had a brilliant expert in my face there to help me. And my live-in life coach and the child in me said, no, don't you dare. And my ego was wanting to be their poster child. I knew if I said yes, I was going to be their poster child. And so get still, because learn to trust your live-in life coach, your body. I mean, your body matters. Your body is trying to tell you something. And just, for me, pay attention. Something doesn't feel right, sink into that and talk to it, because it's there to tell you something. It can save you money. Yes.
Time, energy, stress, and especially money. Yeah. Those are all the things that get pushed in order to make us pay. So thank you so much.
What can we say?
What can we say? Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of my life and part of me learning these unbelievably important lessons. And for my beautiful butterfly, you and your husband showcased today on the show for the first time. So thank you for being who you are. And I'm excited to hear the feedback from the show today. Thank you, audience, for listening. And I'd love for you to connect with Tami. Afterwards, you'll see her information at the bottom of the page. And of course, I'd love to hear your feedback on what you thought of our show, what you learned. Bye for now.
All right. Bye-bye.